The metallic clang of the school gates closing behind him sent an unexpected chill down Quentin Armstrong's spine. A sensation he hadn't felt in over 15 years, since he'd last walked through these very same corridors. He adjusted his suit jacket, suddenly aware of how out of place the expensive fabric looked against the familiar worn brick of Riverside High School. The building looked smaller somehow, as if his memories had inflated its importance over the years. Paint peeled near the entrance, and the same crooked basketball hoop still hung at an awkward angle in the courtyard. Some things never changed, though his bank account certainly had. "Can I help you?" a voice called from the main office window, friendly but cautious. "I'm here for the alumni donation meeting," Quentin replied, pulling the email from his phone. "I believe Miss Anderson is expecting me." The secretary nodded with recognition. "Oh yes, Mr. Armstrong. She's just finishing up with a student. Please take a seat." Quentin settled into one of the plastic chairs that lined the hallway, the same uncomfortable seats that had held countless nervous students waiting to see the principal. He'd sat in one of these more times than he cared to remember, usually because of his grades. Math had nearly kept him from graduating. If it hadn't been for his English teacher's relentless tutoring sessions, he probably wouldn't have made it through senior year at all. That teacher's face drifted through his memory, slightly hazy now. Miss Williams. She'd been young then, probably only a few years into teaching. While other teachers had written him off as another struggling student destined for mediocrity, she'd seen something different. She'd stayed after school 3 days a week, helping him not just with English but connecting the concepts to real life in ways that finally made sense. She'd believed in him when he hadn't believed in himself. "Mr. Armstrong." A woman's voice pulled him from his thoughts. He stood, turning to face Principal Anderson, a stern woman in her 60s who extended her hand professionally. But it wasn't the principal who captured his attention. Standing just behind her in the doorway was a woman about his age, late 30s, with rich auburn hair pulled back in a loose ponytail and eyes the color of warm honey. She wore a simple blue dress and carried a stack of papers against her chest. Their eyes met, and Quentin felt the world tilt slightly. "Quentin!" The woman's lips parted in surprise, those papers nearly slipping from her grasp. "Miss Williams." The name escaped before he could process the impossible coincidence. "It's Mrs. Whitmore now," she said softly, then quickly corrected herself with a slight blush. "Actually, it's Miss Whitmore. I went back to my maiden name after the divorce, but please call me Aria. You're not my student anymore." Principal Anderson looked between them with interest. "You two know each other?" "Aria was my English teacher," Quentin explained, unable to take his eyes off her. She'd changed, of course, but in ways that only enhanced what he remembered. The nervous energy of a young teacher had been replaced by quiet confidence, and the passage of time had refined her features rather than diminished them. "She's the reason I graduated, actually." Aria laughed, a sound that brought back memories of encouragement and patient explanations. "I'm sure you would have managed without me." "I really wouldn't have." The words came out more seriously than he'd intended. Principal Anderson cleared her throat. "Well, this is fortunate. Aria actually heads our alumni outreach committee now. She'll be working directly with you on the scholarship fund you're establishing." Something sparked in the air between them, an awareness that hadn't existed 15 years ago when she'd been his teacher, and he'd been a struggling 18-year-old. Now they stood as equals, two adults with history but no barriers. "I didn't know you were the donor," Aria said, regaining her composure. "The principal just said we had a generous alumni wanting to give back." "I try to keep it quiet," Quentin admitted. "Made my money in commercial real estate development. Built my company from the ground up, but I never forgot where I started." They moved into the conference room, and over the next hour they discussed the logistics of the scholarship fund. Quentin had committed $500,000 to create opportunities for students who struggled academically but showed potential in other areas. Students like he'd been. But beneath the professional conversation, something else hummed. He noticed the way Aria tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was thinking. She caught him staring once and blushed, looking down at her notes. When their hands accidentally brushed reaching for the same document, they both pulled back too quickly, too aware. "I should have kept better track of my students," Aria said as they wrapped up. "I had no idea you'd become so successful." "It took a while," Quentin admitted. "Worked construction for 5 years after high school, saved every penny, went to community college at night, then state school. Started flipping houses in my mid-20s. The real money didn't come until my early 30s when I landed a major commercial development contract." "That's incredible," Aria said, genuine admiration in her voice. "I always knew you had drive. You just needed to find the right application for it." "What about you?" Quentin asked, not ready for the meeting to end. Still teaching," she confirmed. "English literature and creative writing now. I love it." Principal Anderson had excused herself 20 minutes ago, leaving them alone. Neither had seemed to notice her departure. "The divorce," Quentin ventured carefully. "Are you okay?" Aria smiled, though sadness touched her eyes. "It's been 2 years. We married young, grew apart. He wanted different things. I wanted to stay here, keep teaching. He wanted to move to New York for his finance career. Neither of us was wrong, we just weren't right for each other anymore. I'm sorry. Don't be, I'm happy now. I have my students, my books, a little house near the river. It's a good life." Quentin found himself wanting to know everything about that life, every detail that had filled the 15 years since he'd sat in her classroom. The intensity of his interest surprised him. "We should grab coffee," he heard himself say, "to discuss the scholarship fund further. There are details we didn't cover today." It was a thin excuse, and they both knew it. The look Aria gave him was searching, as if she were trying to determine whether this was appropriate, whether the old boundaries still applied. "I'd like that," she finally said, and the smile that accompanied her words made his chest tighten. They exchanged phone numbers, and as Quentin walked back to his car, a silver Mercedes he'd bought last year, he couldn't stop replaying the meeting in his mind. This wasn't the grateful former student appreciating his teacher. This was something entirely different, something that made him feel like he was 18 again, but with the confidence of the man he'd become. His phone buzzed before he even left the parking lot. "How about tomorrow?" "There's a cafe downtown called Riverside Roasters. 4 o'clock. Quentin smiled at Aria's text. "I'll be there." He arrived 15 minutes early the next day, nervous in a way he hadn't been since his first major business deal. He changed clothes 3 times that morning, finally settling on jeans and a casual button-down. Not too formal, not too casual. Aria walked in exactly at 4, and Quentin stood automatically. She'd left her hair down today, and it fell in soft waves past her shoulders. She wore jeans too, and a green sweater that brought out the gold in her eyes. "Hi," she said, slightly breathless. "Hi." They ordered coffee, and the conversation flowed easily at first. They talked about the scholarship fund, which students might benefit most, how to structure the application process. But gradually, inevitably, the discussion became personal. "Did you always want to teach?" Quentin asked, cradling his coffee mug. "Always," Aria confirmed. "Even as a kid, I'd line up my stuffed animals and teach them. My parents thought I'd outgrow it, but I never did. There's something magical about watching someone understand something for the first time, seeing that light bulb moment. I remember having one of those with you, Quentin said. We were working on literary analysis, and you compared understanding character motivation to understanding why people made business decisions. Something just clicked. Suddenly, I could see the patterns. I remember that too, Arya said softly. You came in the next day so excited about the essay you'd written. You made me believe I was smart, Quentin admitted. Everyone else saw a kid who couldn't do math. You saw potential. Arya reached across the table, her hand covering his briefly. You were always smart, Quentin. You just learned differently. The touch sent electricity through his arm, and when she pulled back, he immediately missed the warmth. They looked at each other, and something unspoken passed between them. Acknowledgement, attraction, possibility. This isn't weird, is it? Quentin asked. You were my teacher. You were 18, Arya said carefully, and it was 15 years ago. We're different people now. Are we? Quentin challenged gently. I still see the woman who stayed late helping a struggling student, who brought in extra books she thought I'd enjoy, who never gave up. And I see someone who's grown into exactly who I hoped you'd become, Arya replied. Confident, successful, but still kind. You came back to help other students like you. That says everything. 4 o'clock became 5, then 6. The cafe started to empty around them, but neither wanted to leave. They talked about everything. His years building his company, the mistakes and victories, the loneliness that sometimes came with success. She shared stories about her students, her divorce, her journey back to herself. I should let you go, Quentin finally said as the barista began stacking chairs. But I don't want to. Arya's smile was warm and open. Then don't. They walked along the river as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Quentin told her about the projects he was working on, a mixed-use development that would bring affordable housing and retail space to a struggling neighborhood. Arya shared her dream of starting a creative writing program that could nurture young writers. I could fund that, Quentin said impulsively. The writing program, included in the scholarship initiative. Quentin, you're already giving so much. I want to do this for you, for students who might love writing the way you do. Arya stopped walking, turning to face him. The fading light caught in her hair, and Quentin thought he'd never seen anyone more beautiful. Why are you really doing all this? She asked quietly. The scholarship fund, the writing program. Honestly, Quentin took a breath. I came back to this town to give back, yes. To help kids who needed what I needed. But standing in that hallway yesterday, seeing you again, something woke up inside me. You changed my life once, Arya. Made me believe I could be more than what everyone expected. And now, being here with you, I feel like anything is possible again. Quentin, she whispered, his name a prayer on her lips. Is this crazy? He asked. Tell me if this is crazy. It's crazy, she agreed. But I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since yesterday. I remembered you as a student, but meeting you now as the man you've become, it's different. You're different. Can I see you again? Quentin asked. Not for coffee to discuss scholarships. A real date, dinner maybe. Arya's answer was immediate. Yes. They went to dinner 3 nights later at an Italian restaurant downtown. Quentin picked her up at her house, a charming cottage with flower boxes in the windows and a porch swing. She invited him in while she grabbed her jacket, and he took in the details that made up her life. Books everywhere, of course. Photographs of students and friends. A piano in the corner. You play? He asked, gesturing to the instrument. Badly, she laughed. But it makes me happy. At dinner, they sat close enough that their knees touched under the table. The attraction between them was undeniable now, acknowledged and growing. When Quentin reached across to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, Arya leaned into his touch. I was worried about this, she admitted over dessert. About what people might think. The former teacher dating her former student. We're both adults, Quentin said firmly. With no power imbalance, no impropriety, just two people who found each other again at the right time. The right time, Arya repeated thoughtfully. I like that. I don't think this could have happened before. We both needed to become who we are now. Quentin walked her to her door at the end of the night, and they stood on her porch under the glow of the yellow light. Moths danced around them, and somewhere nearby, a dog barked. I had a really good time, Arya said, playing with her keys. Me too. Quentin stepped closer, giving her every opportunity to step back. She didn't. Can I kiss you? I was hoping you would. Her lips were soft against his, and the kiss started gentle but deepened with the promise of everything building between them. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing heavily. Wow, Arya breathed. Yeah, Quentin agreed. Wow, they fell into a pattern over the following weeks. Dinners, long walks, phone calls that stretched late into the night. Quentin found himself restructuring his schedule around seeing her, something he'd never done before. Work had always come first, the relentless drive that had built his company. But with Arya, he wanted to be present, to soak up every moment. She brought him to her classroom one afternoon after school, showing him the space that was her second home. Student essays covered a bulletin board, and inspirational quotes decorated the walls. Quentin picked up a well-worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird from her desk. We read this together, he remembered. You said it was important to understand that courage wasn't always loud. I'm surprised you remember that. I remember everything about that year, Quentin said. It saved my life, Arya. I was heading nowhere fast, and you gave me direction. She walked to him, wrapping her arms around his waist and resting her head against his chest. He held her close, breathing in the floral scent of her shampoo. You saved yourself, she murmured. I just cheered you on. Their relationship deepened as autumn progressed into winter. Quentin met Arya's friends, fellow teachers who grilled him good-naturedly about his intentions. He passed their inspection, apparently, because they pulled Arya aside to tell her how happy she seemed, how different from the sad, closed-off woman she'd been after her divorce. Arya met Quentin's business partner, Marcus Chen, a sharp-minded developer who'd been with him since the early days. Over dinner, Marcus regaled Arya with stories of Quentin's rise, the risks he'd taken, the vision he'd had. He's too modest to tell you himself, Marcus said, but your guy here revolutionized affordable housing development in this region. Made it profitable to build quality housing for working families. That's rare. He's not my guy, Arya protested weakly, but the smile she gave Quentin contradicted her words. Later in the car, Quentin reached over to take her hand. For the record, I really like the sound of that. Being your guy. Good, Arya said, lacing their fingers together. Because that's what you are. The first time Quentin told her he loved her, they were cooking dinner in her kitchen. She was attempting to teach him how to make homemade pasta, and he was failing spectacularly. Flour covered every surface, including a smudge on Arya's nose that he'd put there during a playful moment. She was laughing at his latest disaster, and the sound filled her small kitchen with joy. Quentin stopped what he was doing, really looking at her. Flour dusted, hair messy, eyes bright with happiness. She was everything. I love you, he said, the words falling into the comfortable silence that followed her laughter. Arya stilled, her hands frozen in the pasta dough. What? I love you, Quentin repeated, more certain now. I know it's fast and maybe it's crazy, but I've never been more sure of anything. I love you, Arya. She launched herself at him, forgetting her floury hands, and kissed him with everything she had. When she pulled back, her eyes were shining. I love you too, she whispered. So much it terrifies me. Don't be terrified, Quentin said, holding her close. I've got you. That night, after dinner and wine and more laughter, their relationship shifted into deeper intimacy. They took their time, learning each other with reverence and passion. Afterward, lying tangled in her sheets, Quentin traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "Stay," Aria murmured sleepily. "Don't go home tonight." "I'm not going anywhere," he promised. As Christmas approached, Quentin wanted to do something special. The scholarship fund was officially launching in January, and he'd added the creative writing program Aria had dreamed of. But he wanted to give her something personal, something that showed he understood who she was. He worked with a rare book dealer to track down a first edition of Aria's favorite novel, a collection of poetry by Pablo Neruda. It cost a small fortune, but watching her face when she unwrapped it on Christmas morning made it priceless. "Quentin," she breathed, holding the book like it was made of glass. "This is too much." "Nothing is too much for you," he said simply. Her gift to him was a leather-bound journal, the cover embossed with his initials. Inside the front cover, she'd written in her elegant teacher's handwriting, "For all the stories yet to be written. Love, Aria." "You told me once you wanted to write a book about your experiences," she explained. "About building something from nothing. I thought you should have a proper place to start." Quentin pulled her into his arms, overwhelmed by how well she knew him, how she saw not just who he was but who he wanted to become. They spent New Year's Eve at a charity gala Quentin had been invited to, a fundraiser for educational initiatives. Aria wore a stunning black dress, and Quentin couldn't take his eyes off her all night. He introduced her to everyone as his girlfriend, pride evident in his voice. As midnight approached, they stepped onto a balcony overlooking the city. Lights glittered below them, and the sounds of the party faded to a distant hum. "I have something to tell you," Aria said, nervous excitement in her voice. "What is it?" "The school board approved the creative writing program. We'll start it next semester. 15 students in the inaugural class." "Aria, that's amazing." Quentin swept her up, spinning her around as she laughed. "It's because of you," she said when he set her down. "Your funding made it possible." "No," Quentin corrected. "Your vision made it possible, your passion. I just wrote a check." Inside, someone started counting down to midnight. Quentin framed Aria's face with his hands, looking into her eyes. "I want every New Year's with you," he said seriously. "Every midnight, every morning after, I want it all, Aria." "You have me," she promised. "Completely." They kissed as the clock struck 12 and fireworks exploded over the city. It felt like a beginning, like the start of something bigger than either of them alone. The scholarship fund launched in January with significant media coverage. Quentin had tried to keep his name out of it, but the story was too good. Local boy made good returns to help struggling students, inspired by the teacher who believed in him. When reporters found out he was dating that same teacher, the human interest angle went national. Aria handled the attention with grace, though she hated being in the spotlight. During one interview, a reporter asked how it felt to date a former student. "Quentin was never really my student," Aria explained patiently. "He was a young man I had the privilege of teaching for 1 year, 15 years ago. The man I'm dating now is someone I met as an adult, someone I've gotten to know on equal footing. We're building something new together, not reliving the past." Quentin loved her even more for that answer, for the way she protected what they had while being honest about its origins. Valentine's Day came, and Quentin planned something special. He'd been thinking about it for weeks, and everything had to be perfect. He took Aria back to the high school after hours, using his connections with the principal to gain access. "Why are we here?" Aria asked, confused as he led her through the dark hallways. "You'll see." He brought her to her old classroom, the one where she'd taught him 15 years ago. It was different now, belonged to another teacher, but the basic layout was the same. Quentin had set up candles throughout the room and a small table with dinner from her favorite restaurant. "This is where it started," he said softly, "where you changed my life. I wanted to bring you back here to show you how far we've come." Tears shimmered in Aria's eyes. "Quentin, this is beautiful." They ate dinner surrounded by the ghosts of who they'd once been, a teacher and student who'd had no idea their lives would intertwine this way. After they finished eating, Quentin stood and pulled Aria to her feet. "I used to sit right there," he said, pointing to a desk by the window. "Third row back. And you'd stand at the front bringing books to life, making words matter. I had no idea I was looking at my future." "We couldn't have known," Aria said. "We weren't ready then." "But we're ready now," Quentin said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Aria's hands flew to her mouth. "Quentin." "I know it's only been a few months," he said, opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "But I've never been more certain of anything. You saw who I could become before I saw it myself. You believed in me then, and you love me now. Aria Whitmore, will you marry me?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, absolutely yes." Quentin slid the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply, pouring every ounce of love he felt into that kiss. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making you happy," he promised. "You already do," Aria said, tears streaming down her face. "Every single day." They set the wedding for June, a small ceremony in the garden of a historic mansion overlooking the river. Aria wore a simple white dress that made her look ethereal, and Quentin thought he'd never seen anything more beautiful than her walking toward him down the aisle. Principal Anderson officiated, having gotten certified online specifically for their wedding. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that the woman who'd introduced them was now joining them in marriage. "When Quentin walked into my office 9 months ago," Principal Anderson said during the ceremony, "I had no idea I was orchestrating a reunion that would lead to this. But watching these two together, it's clear they were always meant to find each other again. Sometimes the best love stories take time to develop, and this one was 15 years in the making." Marcus served as Quentin's best man, and Aria's best friend from college stood as her maid of honor. Their vows were personal and tearful, promises of partnership and support and endless love. "You taught me to believe in myself," Quentin said, his voice thick with emotion. "Now let me spend every day showing you how much I believe in us." "You walked back into my life when I needed hope," Aria responded. "And you've given me more than I ever dreamed of. I can't wait to see what we build together." When they kissed as husband and wife, their guests erupted in applause. The reception was joyful and intimate, exactly what they'd wanted. Students from Aria's classes came to celebrate, along with business associates of Quentin's, creating an interesting mix of worlds. During their first dance, Quentin held Aria close, swaying to a song about finding home. "Mrs. Armstrong," he murmured against her ear. "How does that sound?" "Like forever," Aria replied. "Like everything." They honeymooned in Italy, 2 weeks of wine and pasta and art and lazy mornings in bed. They explored ancient ruins and modern galleries, talking about everything and nothing. Quentin took hundreds of pictures, wanting to capture every moment of Aria's joy. One evening in Florence, sitting by the Arno River watching the sunset, Aria turned to him with a serious expression. "I want to talk about the future," she said. "Okay," Quentin replied, giving her his full attention. "I love teaching," Aria began, "and I don't want to stop, but I've been thinking about what else I want, what we want." "Tell me." "Kids," she said simply. "I want to have children with you, not right away, but soon." "Is that something you want?" Quentin's answer came from the deepest part of himself. "I want everything with you. Kids, a home, a whole life. Yes, Absolutely yes. Aria's relieved smile told him she'd been nervous about his answer. I was worried you'd think it was too soon. Aria, I knew I wanted forever with you after our second coffee date. Kids are part of that forever. They talked logistics as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and red. They'd need a bigger house, one that could accommodate a family. Aria wanted to keep teaching at least a few more years, establish the writing program fully before considering maternity leave. Quentin could be flexible with his work, structure his schedule to be present. When they returned home, they started house hunting. Quentin wanted to buy something massive, a mansion that would showcase his success. But Aria steered him towards something more practical, a beautiful craftsman-style home with 4 bedrooms, a large backyard, and a reading nook that made her eyes light up. This is perfect, she said, walking through the empty rooms. Can't you see it? Kids playing in that backyard, family dinners in this kitchen, reading together in that nook. Quentin could see it clear as day. Let's make an offer. They moved in during late summer, spending weekends painting rooms and choosing furniture. Quentin hired decorators, but Aria insisted on making the house their own, adding personal touches that reflected both of them. His office had sleek modern lines and a view of the garden. Her reading nook became a cozy haven filled with books and soft blankets. The first dinner party they hosted was for the scholarship recipients, 15 students who'd been chosen for the inaugural class. Quentin and Aria wanted to meet them all personally, to hear their stories and dreams. A young woman named Sophie, who wanted to be a journalist despite struggling with math, reminded Quentin so much of himself that he pulled Aria aside afterward. That was me, he said, watching Sophie animatedly discuss her plans with other students. That determination despite the obstacles. And look at you now, Aria said, squeezing his hand. That'll be her one day, because of what you created. What we created, Quentin corrected. None of this happens without you. As fall approached and the school year started, Aria threw herself into teaching and the new writing program. Quentin watched her flourish, loving what she did and good at it. He made sure to surprise her at school sometimes, bringing her favorite coffee or lunch, stealing kisses between classes. The other teachers teased Aria mercilessly about her millionaire husband who looked at her like she hung the moon. She pretended to be embarrassed but secretly loved it. Quentin's business continued to thrive, but he found himself making different choices. He turned down projects that would require extensive travel, prioritized developments that benefited communities rather than just maximizing profit. Aria's influence, her values, had become his own. During Christmas of that year, almost exactly a year after their first Christmas together, Aria gave Quentin a gift that changed everything. She handed him a small wrapped box, and when he opened it, he found a tiny pair of baby shoes. Aria, he looked up at her, hardly daring to hope. We're going to have a baby, she said, joy and tears mixing together. I'm 8 weeks along. Quentin lifted her up, spinning her around the living room of their home. We're going to be parents, are you happy? Aria asked, though his reaction made the answer obvious. Happy doesn't begin to cover it, Quentin said, setting her down gently, suddenly aware of her precious cargo. You've given me everything, Aria. A home, love, purpose, and now this. I don't have words. They told their families over the holidays, met with excitement and congratulations. Quentin's mother cried, saying she'd worried he'd never settle down. Aria's father pulled Quentin aside, telling him gruffly that he'd better take care of his daughter and grandbaby. With my life, Quentin promised, and meant it absolutely. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Quentin attended every doctor's appointment, his hand holding Aria's when they heard the heartbeat for the first time, his eyes wet when they found out they were having a boy. A son, he said reverently, his hand on Aria's growing belly. "We're having a son." They painted the nursery together, a soft blue-gray with white trim. Quentin assembled furniture while Aria organized tiny clothes and blankets. Sometimes they'd just sit in the room, imagining the life that would soon fill it. "What should we name him?" Aria asked one evening, nestled against Quentin on the couch. They went through dozens of options, but nothing felt quite right until Quentin suggested, "What about Sebastian? It means venerable, respected." "Sebastian Armstrong," Aria tested the name. "I love it." Sebastian James Armstrong was born on a beautiful May morning, arriving a week early and making his presence known with healthy cries. Quentin held his son for the first time with shaking hands, overwhelmed by the tiny, perfect human they'd created. "Hi, Sebastian," he whispered. "I'm your dad. And I promise I'm going to do my best to be the father you deserve." Aria watched through happy tears as the two people she loved most in the world met for the first time. Quentin brought the baby to her, and they marveled together at the miracle of him. "We made a person," Aria said in wonder. "Look at him, Quentin. He's perfect." "Just like his mother," Quentin replied, kissing her forehead. Those first few months were exhausting and wonderful. Quentin took paternity leave from work, something his business partner fully supported. He wanted to be present for every moment, every milestone. He changed diapers and learned to swaddle, walked the floors during midnight crying sessions, and fell more in love with his family every single day. Aria was a natural mother, patient and nurturing. Watching her with Sebastian made Quentin fall in love with her all over again. She'd always been beautiful, but motherhood added another dimension to that beauty. One night, after getting Sebastian down for the night, they collapsed on the couch together. Aria's head rested on Quentin's shoulder, both of them too tired to move. "I never imagined this," Aria said softly. "When I was teaching you 15 years ago, I never could have dreamed we'd end up here." "The universe knew," Quentin replied. "It just took us a while to catch up." "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Aria asked. "If you hadn't come back to set up the scholarship fund, if Principal Anderson had assigned someone else to work with you, all the time," Quentin admitted. "And it terrifies me how easily we could have missed each other." "But we didn't. We found our way back to each other exactly when we were supposed to." "I'm so grateful," Aria said, "for all of it. The second chance, the love, our family." "Me too," Quentin said. "Every single day." As Sebastian grew, he became a perfect blend of both parents. He had Quentin's dark hair and determined personality, Aria's honey-colored eyes and gentle nature. Quentin loved watching Aria read to their son, seeing the next generation fall in love with stories the way she had. The scholarship program continued to grow, helping dozens of students achieve their potential. Sophie, the young journalist who'd reminded Quentin of himself, sent them updates from her journalism program at college. Other recipients stopped by to share their success stories, each one a reminder of the ripple effects of believing in people. Aria's writing program became one of the most sought-after electives at the school. Students flourished under her guidance, several winning regional and national writing competitions. She'd found a way to multiply her impact, to reach even more young people than she could have alone. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Quentin planned a surprise for Aria. He'd been working on something in secret, and the time had finally come to reveal it. He blindfolded her and drove her across town, Sebastian strapped safely in his car seat chattering happily. "Where are we going?" Aria asked, laughing. "You'll see," Quentin promised. When he removed the blindfold, they were standing in front of a beautiful old building that had been recently renovated. A sign above the door read, "The Whitmore Center for Young Writers." Aria gasped. "Quentin, what is this?" It's a nonprofit writing center for kids from all backgrounds, he explained. Free workshops, mentoring programs, resources for young writers. I wanted to take what you started at the school and expand it. You'll run it if you want to, or just be involved as much as you'd like. Tears streamed down Aria's face. I can't believe you did this. You gave me everything, Quentin said simply. Let me give this back to you. The center opened that fall with Aria serving as director. She still taught part-time at the high school, but devoted most of her energy to the new venture. Young writers from across the region came to the center, finding community and support and belief in their abilities. Quentin watched his wife thrive, balancing motherhood and her passion for teaching with a grace that amazed him. Sebastian spent afternoons at the center, growing up surrounded by books and creativity and love. 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter, Emma Rose Armstrong. She had Aria's auburn hair and Quentin's determined chin, and she wrapped her father around her tiny finger from day one. Our family is complete, Aria said, holding Emma while Sebastian played quietly nearby with his blocks. It's everything, Quentin agreed. More than I ever dreamed possible. They'd built an entire life together, one filled with love and purpose and joy. The struggling student and the young teacher who'd believed in him had found their way back to each other and created something beautiful. On Sebastian's first day of kindergarten, Quentin and Aria walked him to school together, Emma in her stroller. Standing in front of Riverside High, where their story had begun so many years ago, they shared a look that contained their entire history. Full circle, Aria said softly. New beginning, Quentin countered. For Sebastian, for us, it never really ends, does it? The story just keeps evolving. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Quentin found Aria in her reading nook with a book. He sat beside her, and she immediately curled into him, the familiar comfort of years together. I love our life, she said simply. I love you, Quentin replied. Then, now, always. They sat together in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other against all odds and built something lasting. The millionaire and the teacher, the student and his inspiration, the husband and wife, the parents and partners. Outside, stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Inside, surrounded by books and memories and the sounds of their children sleeping safely nearby, Quentin and Aria held each other close. Their love story, which had started in a classroom so many years ago, continued to unfold in beautiful and unexpected ways. And they lived happily, purposefully, and deeply in love for all the years that followed. Creating scholarships, nurturing young writers, raising their children, and proving that sometimes the best love stories are the ones that take time to find their way home. The teacher had taught the student about possibility, and together they'd built a life that exceeded both their dreams. It was exactly as it was always meant to be.